Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This morning's learning is sponsored by Cindy, Joel, and Alana Bauman in memory of Cindy's brothers. Their yortzeits on the 5th of Tishrei, Louis Cooper, Levi Yitzchak ben Shaul HaKohen, and Alan Cooper, Aaron Leib ben Shaul HaKohen. I just want to say for a moment, I'm sure I'm not the only one on this Zoom, was very fond memories of Louis. I actually believe I met Alan once or twice over the years as well, both extremely kind and charming, but for those of us who knew Louis a little bit better, a remarkably kind-hearted and warm individual. He was the kind of person who, when you saw him, it made your day. If I could just say one thing, these are the days that we should be thinking about who we are and what we're doing. One of the most beautiful compliments I've ever heard about anyone. So Dr. Cooper was an oncologist. If I'm not mistaken, he was a pediatric oncologist. Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong. I was a pediatric oncologist. Thank you, Roberta. And a doctor in the community said to me after he passed away, he said, I want you to understand something. He was an oncologist at a time where there was much less that could be done for cancer than there is today. And that means that the bottom line is the vast majority of his patients died. Children died. And again, he did what he could for them. Surely he was able to heal kids. Surely he was able to make it more bearable. But the bottom line is not any fault of his own, just the medicine at the time. The vast majority of his patients died, and as children. And for a person to walk around with such a pleasant bearing, carrying that burden professionally is a remarkable statement about who a person is. That's a comment that was said to me after he passed that has always really impacted me. So our learning today, thank you, Cindy, for including us in remembering a very special person, two very special people. And our learning today should be a schus for the neshamos. Okay. We are on chapter 31, verse 7. We're actually in the middle of the Kli Yakar on chapter 31 on Pasuk Zayin. It's a lengthy Kli Yakar. In my layout, there's a paragraph beginning with the words V'doma lazeh. It's around halfway through the Kli Yakar on Pasuk Zayin. I just want to remind everyone of the basic questions. So it says Moshe called to Yoshua in the eyes of Bnei Israel. Why say in the eyes of Bnei Israel? Why does he tell Yoshua it's all about Yoshua's strength? It's not all about Yoshua's strength, it's about God's strength. But what we're really focusing on is some differences between what Moshe says to Yoshua and what God says to Yoshua. And specifically, we've zeroed in right now that Moshe refers to the people as the Am. And when he's speaking to Yoshua, you'll bring the nation. And God refers to them as Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. And why that difference? Also context, Moshe really literally, if you translate the word literally, Moshe says you'll come along with them. And God says you'll bring them. Okay. So, excuse me. So where we left off yesterday, the Kli Yakar was saying that the term Bnei Yisrael normally connotes sort of like the spiritual elite of the people. You know, people following in the ways of our patriarch Yisrael. Whereas the Am is the masses. Moshe says, in the eyes of all the Jewish people, be strong, because you will come along with this nation. Umilas musav ashalamata lomar leinei kol Yisrael kol l'rabos hagerim v'amuksam shaba'am leinei kulam chazak ve'ematz. In the eyes of all of the Jewish people, everybody, whether it be everybody. Ratzalomar asay leineim dvarim hagormim chizuk be'amuna. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Yoshua, in your leadership of the Jewish people, you have to be strong, chazak ve'emat, you have to be strong in inspiring them. And you have to ask yourself how everybody in Bnei Yisrael will view your actions and will learn from your actions. If you remember, we left off yesterday, the Kli Yakar cited a pasuk where Hashem criticizes Moshe for his leadership with the story of the hitting the rock. Yan, ki ata tavo es ha'am hazeh, ki yesh b'nei Yisrael gam muktzim shenikru b'shem am. You got to have everybody in mind, Yoshua. Don't just try to give a drasha that the loftiest 5% of the nation will be moved by. You have to have them all in mind. They're not so they're not so strong in their faith. Okay. You always have to be asking yourself how to strengthen them in their faith. I don't want to have happen to you what's happened to me. I'm barred from entering into the land of Israel because I messed up with dating the rock. It's clear in the pasuk. It's not that it was so terrible that Moshe hit the rock. It's that he missed the opportunity to inspire the people appropriately. It's because of the reaction of the Jewish people that it was told that I can't go in. Okay. Skipping a couple lines. And if you look at it from this perspective, that this is Moshe's message, all the differences between what Moshe says to Yeshua and what God says to Yeshua are understandable. Ki b'divrei Moshe liYoshua nemar, ki ata tavo es ha'am hazeh, medaber b'muktzim sheba'am, min hatam she'izkarnu, ki mitzidam chutzrach la'ashiro, le'necho Yisrael chazak be'amatz. Moshe's focusing on the masses. Lomar skenim shebedur imcha hakol lefi datam v'atzasam ki be'emes tachas gar b'mevin me'akos ksil meya v'hamuksim sheba'am ein makabel maris kol ikar ve'in darkam lisa ba'ol kabel le'am divrei manigayim al kein amar Moshe ki atot tavoas amazeh hakol lefi datam v'atzasam. We mentioned yesterday that Rashi says that what Moshe is saying to Yoshua when he says come with the people is you have to work in tandem with the people in leadership positions, the elders. So you know why Moshe is saying that? Because Moshe is focusing on what's the language? Moshe is focusing on the everybody. And he says to them, if you think you're just going to get up and you're going to say, okay, everybody, this is what we're doing. If you think they're all going to fall in line, you got to be kidding. And so you need allies. And you need to figure out who you can interface with, who will inspire the people, and different people will inspire different segments of the nation. You need to come along with them. You can't just start walking. That's why Moshe says, you'll take them to the land that was sworn to their fathers. Moshe says the people that you've got to think about are not people who in their own merits would go into the land of Israel. It's the merits of the previous generations. It's your merits. They're tag-alongs. They're spiritual tag-alongs, but they're part of Israel. Moshe says to Yoshua that you will take them into land that God swore to them, and you will impart the land to them. What's he saying? He's saying that it's in the merit, that God swore to their patriarchs. It's in the merit of the previous generations and in your merit. When God says to Yeshua, be strong, he just says to him, be strong in your own spirituality. He's not talking about Yeshua's leadership of the people. He's talking about Yeshua in his own right. He doesn't say there's not an emphasis on all of the Jewish people when God is speaking to him. God's focus when he speaks to Yeshua is on the strongest spiritual individuals. And the very strong people don't need great inspiration from you. And whatever you say, they'll do. So God says to Moshe, you're going to bring them in. There are things that you're going to say that don't make sense to them. They'll shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's what Yoshua said. We'll do it. Okay. I think we spent a long time in this Kli Yakar, but just to sum up what the Kli Yakar is saying, it's an interesting pshat. What he's basically saying is that, and I don't think it means that Hashem is correcting Moshe. I think there's two sets of instructions here. And Moshe is giving instructions to Yeshua in an inspired manner. And of course, what God says to Yeshua, of course, is correct. And that is, Moshe tells him, you've got to think about the people. You have to, and therefore you need to interface with your allies. You need to understand that they're not great tzaddikim. They're good, but they're not great. And the whole reason they're getting this land is because they're part of the Jewish people. And you have to act accordingly. And God says to Yoshua, you can't spend your life thinking about every last person, because you have to be the leader that everybody needs. That means you have to always keep yourself on a spiritual high plane. And both are true. You have to be thinking of everybody, but you always have to keep on growing yourself. And you always have to ask yourself what the people who are on the highest plane, what their perspective is and how they're getting this. Just, I think it's an interesting chat in the Kli Yakar. Okay. Just an interesting point, verse 9. Vayichtov Moshe es haTorah azos. Moshe wrote this Torah. Vayitna el haKohanim b'nei Levi hanosim es Aron bris Hashem. And he gave it to the Kohanim, the children of Levi who carry the Aron, the Okozik Israel. And he gave it to all of the elders. What did Moshe write at this point in time? It says in the pasuk, Moshe wrote this Torah. Ramban on pasuk Tes. Vayichtov Moshe es haTorah azos. Mitchilas Bereishis ad leinei kol Yisrael. This was the full Torah. V'af al pi shebekan kasov tikras haTorah azos neged kol Yisrael v'uromes l'sefer hazeh shel elu dvarim al das Rabbeinu. There's a pasuk later on that talks about the mitzvah of Hakel. Hakel is on Sukkot, following the Shemitah year. Actually, it lines up to Sukkot this year. When the Jewish people are in the land of Israel, the king should read a section of the Torah to all of the Jewish people. It's a fascinating mitzvah. So in that pasuk, it says, read this Torah. What does it mean? Does it mean read the whole Chumash? Doesn't mean read the whole Chumash. It's referencing the book of Devarim. That's 2 psukim from now. So Ramban says, so some Mefarshim say that what it means Moshe wrote this Torah is the book of Devarim. Aval b'zeh chazar ubir vayihik chalos Moshe l'chtov this Torah azos al sefer atumam v'zeyichlo kol haTorah kula. So Ramban says Moshe Rabbeinu had just completed writing the Torah, and he gave the entire Torah over to the tribe of Levi, the Kohanim. Very interesting thing. See this for on pasuk Tes. Es haTorah azos parshas Hamelech. The Sforno says the exact opposite. The Sforno says he didn't write the whole Torah just now. He wrote the section that the king is supposed to read at Hakel, at that once every 7 years mitzvah. And do you know why he gave it to the Kohanim at this juncture? The halacha is there's a whole procession of bringing in the Torah at Hakel, at that Sukkot, at the Beis HaMikdash following the Shemitah year. And the prominent Kohanim bring the Torah to the king. So Moshe Rabbeinu was trying to recreate this moment as he's talking about the appointment of Yoshua. So Moshe writes the psukim that the king will read in Hakel, and then he hands it to the Kohanim, sort of like the reverse of what will ultimately happen. Okay, V'el kol ziknei Yisrael shemiyadim mikablu haKohanim es haTorah b'Hakel. And actually, it says in the pasuk that Moshe gave it to the Kohanim and to the elders, because this is the reverse. Think of like at a bris, right? It's like this whole thing, the mother gives it to this one, 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 gives it to the father, and the father presents the baby for the bris. So lahavdil, the elders come in bringing the Torah, and then they give it to the prominent Kohanim, and the Kohanim bring it to the king. So Moshe just wrote the psukim of Hakel, and now he presents, it's like the reverse. He presents it to the Kohanim, presents it to the elders. So we discussed this morning the Kli Yakar that we had begun yesterday regarding the distinctions, the differences between the psukim when Moshe speaks to Yoshua about his charge and when God speaks to Yoshua. And we discussed this Ramban and Sforno regarding what exactly did Moshe write at this juncture.